Hey guys, alright, so in this video we're going to go over some armor cycle changes for the new League 3.26, as well as cover a couple of starter builds that I prepared, some things that I'm interested in trying out. But yeah, let's get into the video. So basically, I'm not going to go over all the changes because I'm pretty sure everyone's already read the patch notes, but go over some very important changes to the build. And basically the build is going to be almost the same as 3.25 Settlers, except we get some new things like the rune tattoos and the mercenaries maybe. So I haven't included any of these in the new POBs that I'm going to try out, but there is some additional probably power creep you can get from there. But aside from that, it's going to be pretty much the same as in Settlers with a few changes. So one of the big changes that I'm not really even sure about that much is the Guardian changes, or the, it's the Guardian change. So the Unwavering Faith Ascendancy has been reworked. It now grants increased mana reservation efficiency of skills. And this is pretty big because, well, what this skill used to do, basically here, so auras from your skills grant 5% or 5% increased recovery rate of life, mana, and energy shield. And this scaled with aura effect, so, and you could get the same node on Scion. See, the Scion Guardian node gets basically the same thing, a little bit less, it's only 3% instead of 5%, but this was insane for recovery, for ES recovery as well as ES leech, so you can end up getting tons and tons of regen, like 7,000 ES regen, like 10,000 ES leech, crazy numbers like that. So there is no mention of the Scion node in the patch notes. I'm assuming that that's just something GGG forgot to add. Since the Scion nodes are pretty much kind of copies of the actual Ascendancy, it would make sense to assume that the Scion node has also been changed and now does something different. But you never know, maybe they've left it as it is. That's some kind of like big copium thing stuff. But basically, it's safe to say that the regen node is gone. So that's kind of sad because that was a really nice skill or ascendancy interaction. The upside is that you'll just be able to invest into more damage, and playing with just instant leech and a little bit of regen is still gonna be fine. I did that in the Legacy of Phrygia. On the Aristocrat, we basically just had ES leech, and that was totally fine. Wasn't really as good, but still was doable. Okay, then we have some champion stuff. So the champion Fortify is pretty good, I would say. Champion is now actually a pretty decent ascendancy to play. I'm not really sure how well it'll work out endgame, but it's usually the kind of thing with any other ascendancy besides Scion, is that you end up being spread out way too thin to actually do anything, and ends up being not as good most of the time. So maybe it'll change. I haven't really looked at too many endgame things. Right now I'm mainly just focused on the starter builds that I want to play. But let's go take a look at a couple of them. Okay, so this is the Scion Doryani's prototype build that I'm going to be playing in the start. I am going to go play Scion instead of Champion because, well, I just played a Duelist in the event and I don't really want to play it again, and I want to play Scion, and Scion is actually doing a bit more DPS. Basically, this is the same Doryani's prototype build, except that we're going to be playing Smite instead of Lightning Strike. I mean, you could probably play Lightning Strike too, but I think it is not going to be as strong anymore. And yeah, Smite's probably be better. So this is the POB. You see we have at level 100, we have about 95 million DPS with Smite, with our full burst buffs. The EHP numbers are pretty much the same as it was in the last league, so nothing really special there. Basically just doing the same thing, except this time I'm going over to Inox Revolt to get endurance charges instead of going to where I used to go here to deflection to get him on block. It's one more point, but this route we get a bit more armor and some more damage. So that's pretty much the only change. Aside from that, there is, I think everything else is kind of the same. Okay, so that's that. Let's see what else. So that's pretty much the same. Like everything here is like stuff that we've used before in 3.25, so nothing really special here. I did add some loadouts so you can see what the damage looks like with Mage Blood, for example, or with earlier 96. And I cleared Simulacrum. Usually I'm clearing it on day 1 well, no, day 3, not day 1. You can see here, this is from 3.25. I have videos from pretty much every league clearing it on like day 3. And this setup that we used to clear it was only doing about 13 million DPS, 15 mil DPS or so with this kind of setup. And you can see that our stats now are at level 96. And if we wanted to do this on level 91, we would pretty much just kind of do something like this, right? And then now you're level 91. So this is kind of the stats you would have when you probably jump into your first simulacrum. And you can see damage is quite a bit higher. It's because I guess we do have some better info now. Like at the start of Settlers, I wasn't even using a tincture. A lot of different things that we weren't even doing. So you will get a bit more damage than that. So anyways, so that is that pretty much. And let's go take a look at the champion setup. The champion setup is pretty much the same as the setup I used in the event league, Legacy of Phrygia, except we're just playing champion. There's some things with the Ascendancy I haven't been able to really fix because they're not updated, so I've just added them in a custom config. Right now, this setup is only going for a 26 Fortify setup. And I guess you could use the other gloves, the Celestial Brace. I've kind of edited the item so that it has the bonuses from the additional fortification. It's quite a lot less than using Soul Ascension, but you can use what you want. If you don't like the ramp of Soul Ascension, then you can go for the Celestial Brace, but I think Soul Ascension is probably the better option. Well, in this kind of Doryani's prototype setup, mainly just farming simulacrums pretty much, right? The big differences in the Scion and Champion builds is that Champion does get a bit more armor, although it has less damage overall. Also, it's a bit tankier, but in Simulacrum you don't really even need this much defense. You can see that our level 100 Champion has about 115k max hit, whereas the Scion version only has about 100k, 105k. So not even that big of a difference. The main big difference you can see is on the Fizz and Lightning. Champion does have a bit more armor, so it does get a bit more, max hit here, but that's not really even that important, I think. The main problem in one of these Doryani's prototype setups is that, Lightning degen and none of this kind of armor and that kind of stuff is going to save you there. What is going to save you, though, is having a lot of energy shield, and that's something that Scion does a lot better because we just path through a lot more energy shield nodes, and it's a bit easier to get that. So Scion can get quite a bit more energy shield, so it makes it a lot more comfortable. And if you are going to be leveling to 100 in Simulacrum, you definitely want over 4,500 ES, probably even 5,000 ES, just to be safe. Because like the way, you just take way too much damage from the Lightning Degen. If one of them spawns on you with about 4,500 ES, you can survive for about 2 seconds, or a little bit more if mobs are hitting you. So, and that's usually enough time to actually kill them off before they can do anything, or they can kill you. So with 3,000 ES or so, you pretty much just get one shot. Okay, so that is the Doryani's prototype setups. Not really much to say about them because they're pretty much the same builds as before. We can talk a little bit about the champion setup because a couple of things people might ask. So first of all is the timeless duel. So why aren't we doing more fortify stacking? So basically we could use a Celestial Brace, but like we mentioned, the Soul Ascension is actually more DPS when you're in a combat situation like Simulacrum where you're constantly hitting things. So that's why we're going with Soul Ascension. The March of the Legion is just for the Smite. We're just going to be putting Smite, and I'm pretty sure this will work as well. You put Vol Haste in there. Since we're only going to be using Vol Haste, it will still get the gem levels, and it won't, activate the Divine Blessing because it's a Vol skill. So Vol Smite as well, we're just using this to get extra levels. We have a level 30 Smite because of the March of the Legion boots and that kind of stuff. So that is that. And then Fortify stacking would be good, but the sources of Fortify are not really all that easy to get. Like there's the Timeless Jewel as well, but right now a Timeless Jewel like this with 16% aura effect is actually a lot better DPS wise than just getting +2 Fortify. And the problem with these aura stacker builds is you are spread pretty thin because there's a lot of things you want to do, and there's Timeless Jewels like 7 or 8, Fortify but realistically, no one's going to be able to fit that in their build because you're going to go, are you going to go and take 7 or 8 masteries? It's like what? It's like, I don't know. It's going to be like 30 points or something, right? So not really worth it and not really realistic. I think realistically you'll be at like what, 40-ish fortify on, you know, those kind of builds. So all right, so I did make another version that is not using Doryani's prototype. You can see here that this one's actually pretty decent, I would say. The only downside to this one, I think, is that we don't have instant leech, but anyways. So this one is, these builds all have different versions. So there's a dual wield version and an Aegis version. Aegis version basically just goes for some block, pretty much. And pretty decent stats, I would say, right? On the Aegis version, you get 4k ES, 45 million DPS. With dual wield, you're at like 100 million. This is like kind of without even having a Mage Blood, by the way. So pretty good for that, I would say. You can also decide to use a Necrotic Armor or Twilight Regalia. Twilight Regalia will give you quite a bit more energy shield, but you lose some damage. So it's kind of up to you what you want to use. I did make one for Scion as well, but I don't know, it's not so good. Anyways, so there is these kind of builds here if you want to get some ideas for, I don't know, this is kind of how I would set it up if I was playing, if I wanted to play a non-Doryani's prototype build early on. Alright, so basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to play the Doryani's prototype build on Scion, farm up some gear, farm up the voices and all that kind of stuff, and then move into something like this. This is like far from finished. But basically this is going to be something enough to jump into Valdos and start farming the Valdo maps. This is basically the build from Settlers, but since Settlers, we found out some better ways to increase your damage on Molten Strike and that kind of stuff. I'm trying to account for the Molten Strike nerf with lowering the quality, but anyways, you can expect the damage to go down or up a little bit depending, and there's also the rune words we haven't even added. So, but last league when I started, we were at like 400 million DPS or so. So we're going to be getting quite a bit more damage now because, first of all, we don't have to take Guardian if this isn't changed. If this is changed, then we go back to Guardian, I would say. But we can go take Deadeye, so we get Tailwind, and we also get 1 extra projectile, which is pretty big for Molten Strike. So we end up getting quite a lot more damage, as well as now there is some better link options than what we used to use before. So slower proj and conk effect are actually very big DPS increases, so we'll be using those. Aside from that, the build is pretty much the same. Alright, so one other thing is that if you wanted to play Armor Striker early, which is like really basic gear, this is something you could do on a life-based version. This is what I played in SSF pretty much. You can go check out the video for that and just basically convert it over. Instead of going over here, you just go and start as the champion. In this setup, you probably don't really want to do Lightning Strike. You just stay Smite, and then you just don't take Point Blank and that kind of stuff, right? And then you probably swap up the mark and that kind of stuff. But basically, this is kind of what how you would set up a life-based version of the Armor Stacker build. Maybe I'll kind of rework this a little bit, but we'll see what happens if I have some time. But yeah, pretty decent. It'll be pretty good. You'll be pretty tanky. You'll have good recovery. The main problem with these Armor Stacker builds is there's no avoidance unless you're playing Aegis, so you don't have any dodge or block. So that's why actually in this dual wield version I did actually go for a lot of block. My clusters, and this build ended up having like what, 50-ish% block, I think, and that really makes the build feel a lot better when you're mapping. Okay, but that's gonna be it for the video, guys. I'm going to be adding my POB snapshots over here in the under the real POBs. So I usually do build diaries on league start for the first week or so, and so we'll have some snapshots of my build, as well as I'll go over some of them, seeing what I've changed, maybe if I found any new tech or anything, share those in the videos, so stay tuned for those if you're interested. Alright, but that's gonna be it for the video, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.